Following the deadly attacks committed by Islamists against civilians in Liberia, Nigeria and France, senior executives at two major news corporations have reportedly encouraged employees not to use the word terrorists to describe those who commit violence. According to an internal email at Al Jazeera English, Executive Carlos Van Meek has also instructed staff not to use the word militant, Islamist, extremist and jihad.
Is it okay to use the word Muslim?
This is what he had to say in his email about the use of the word terrorist. Quote, "One person's terrorist is another's freedom fighter. We will not use these terms unless attributed to a source/person." He also said, Mark, that he didn't want to use the word extremist for the reason because he wanted to avoid, or they want to avoid, characterizing people. So the view is, I mean, when I first read this, I was somewhat, not outraged is not the right word, but I was very disappointed, very surprised, because I thought it was tiptoeing around the issue.
Okay, wait for the but.
And I thought it was political correctness for the sake of it. But when you actually dig into the rationale behind it, I actually see the logic, and I don't have as much of an issue with it as I first did.
Okay, so what is your assessment of the logic of it?
Now that's a really good question. What is your assessment of the logic?
Well, they go on to say, for example, with the word Islamist, they say the following. They say, "We will continue to describe groups and individuals by talking about their previous actions and current aims to give viewers the context they require rather than use a simplistic label." So I think rather than have, what they're saying is rather than have that broad brush approach, because obviously it's highly incendiary, because it is so sensitive.
This is highly incendiary too.
What they're seeking to do is to explain it in a more dispassionate, objective, clear, factual-based manner that avoids these labels. And in some respects, it reflects what the White House is doing and the stance that they're taking, which is coming for a lot of criticism from the right.
Yeah, you're right. The White House has certainly done that. So what do you think, the guy on the right?
It's an example that the Western media could take, because you're right, it paints a very simplistic picture. It paints good guy, bad guy.
Are you fucking dense? So it's bad to paint good guy, bad guy, like you say. It's bad. Yeah, you're right. Maybe the guy in the orange jumpsuit is the bad guy and the guy in the black with the knife is the good guy. Is that what you're saying? Has this liberal PC bullshit fallen into such a deep abyss as to forego all human conscience, morality in favor of this retarded relativism?
It paints no context. For instance, the person that ISIS is trying to get released from Jordan is being referred to as the release of a terrorist in Jordan.
So if we take out the terrorist and we just say the release of a person in Jordan, that adds more context, you dimwit?
Now, we don't know in that statement what that person has done, what they're accused of, why they're in prison. They may be a terrorist. I don't know. But to label them as such right off the bat, it takes away any description about if there's a vagueness about why they're in there in the first place.
So let me get this straight. So to add the descriptive word terrorist takes away a description. You gotta make this crap up. She was a fucking suicide bomber and the bomb didn't go off. Is that good enough for you?
The other news agency that has said that adopts the similar guidelines is, in fact, BBC Arabic, which reaches an audience of 36 million people. And they said that the word terrorist, their rationale was that it was too loaded a concept.
Oh, I was wondering about that. So it's the BBC Arabic is the second one. The first one's Al Jazeera. What do both of those have in common? Maybe it's that they both broadcast to predominantly Muslim populations. Could that be it?
What the head of Tariq Kafala, the head of the BBC Arabic, said the following: "We try to avoid describing anyone as a terrorist or an act as being a terrorist. What we try to do is to say that 2 men killed 12 people in an attack on the office of a satirical magazine. That's enough. We know what that means and what it is."
Yeah, it's absolutely enough. You're absolutely right. If you don't want anybody to know who committed the crime, you want to paint it as an act of random violence, or if you don't want to offend terrorists.
So they let the actions speak for themselves without informing or putting anything on top of layering anything.
Yeah, in journalism school they teach that informing is bad, and of course layering is always bad, except in cakes.
On top of it.
Of course, I know our viewers are going to, a lot of people will jump on that and say, why treat these people with kid gloves? Why are you afraid of hurting the sensibilities of people who are killing innocent people?
Wait for the but, or maybe although.
That is the argument that's going to come back. Although in any conflict, there are two sides, and each side believes they're on the right side, and so.
But I don't think it is. I mean, there is, and I hear that, that's a valid response.
But.
And that was my initial response. And why do you not just call it as you see it? But in some respects, that's really a judgment call for us to make as recipients of that information, rather than for the news to inform us. That would be my first thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's up to us, the viewer, when we see a guy being burned alive, to either be totally appalled by it or to grab the popcorn and cheer it on like it's Super Bowl Sunday.
The second thing is that in lots of respects, it's about avoiding falling into the trap of using a similar language and that broad brush language that these people use. So, for example, we're all infidels. For example, that's a word that gets bandied around. Now, that has connotations, and that is disparaging, and it's inaccurate. And so, as a consequence, I feel as though there's some legitimate intellectual logic to it.
Bro, I feel you. You don't want to be called an infidel. You fucking total ignoramus. To them, you're either an infidel or a Muslim. I guess that makes you a Muslim. Okay, so I'm really trying to understand your logic here. What you're saying is that these people can kill cartoonists, can burn people alive, can kidnap the entire student body of a girls' school and rape them, and you will not call them a terrorist, just so long as they call you a Muslim and do not call you an infidel. Boy, that's some really fucked up logic. Hey, you on the right with the glasses, what do you think about that logic?
I think there's a good logic in the approach. It's, like I said, something the Western media should adopt, and it would be helpful in trying to have a more nuanced understanding of the situation.
Right, and I also, but the other interesting thing from Al Jazeera England, or English version, of course, is the fact that obviously it's had this charm offensive for a number of years, having been seen as a mouthpiece and trying to legitimize its presence here. The other thing, which adds a little bit of extra flavor to this particular debate, was the response within, apparently the reported response within the agency, so within the news agency, to the Charlie Hebdo attacks, where apparently half of the staff felt horrified by the attacks. The other half sympathized or empathized and understood that it was really fighting one sense of extremism, being the outrageous act of provocation and the insults, with another form of extremism, which was the violent attacks. Now, I'm not putting any judgment on that, but I'm just stating the fact that apparently that was what was felt within Al Jazeera English, within that news organization. There was that conflict. So the fact that you now add in this style guide, where the semantics of what you can say and what you can't say, that is extra fuel to that particular argument, and it's got people particularly twisted and bent out of shape. And again, I sympathize with that.
Yeah.
Well, since you were so scattered all over the place on that, I want to help you out and clarify for you. You equated the drawing of a cartoon with the assassination of someone for drawing a cartoon. I
have no sympathy for anybody who's causing harm to innocent civilians, and that goes, no matter what country you're from or what your position is. I don't want to give the impression that I support violence against individuals, and that
I feel a butt coming.
That's what people will jump on, and I know we'll have a lot of haters on our comments. But the point here is that if you're a member of ISIS, you don't consider yourself a terrorist. You consider yourself a patriot for your cause. It doesn't help because they consider Americans terrorists.
Right, but the difference between you and me is that you care deeply about not offending this ISIS killer's feelings, and I don't. And I don't give a fuck about his feelings. Fuck him, and fuck you too.
You work for an unfree media and an unfree state.
No, I don't. And you want to? I'm sorry. We're not going to have a discussion on my media and the media I work in, sir. You're avoiding answering the question. You don't want to answer the question, sir.
I'm a free man. I will answer it, and let me just finish speaking. I will answer it because I'm a free person and a free European in a free society. And I can tell you that the primary problem is people who walk into offices and gun people down.